bit about saying no. Uh, you just from the anecdote I began this presentation with, I talked about the responsibility to say no graciously. If you remember earlier in the course, I talked about the fact that most of us have to say no, lots more than we say yes. So how we say no is not an incidental part of what we do. In fact, we all we're doing it all the time. We have to learn how to do it. If we're never comfortable saying no, we're never going to be very good at this job, whether we are the funder or whether we're the professional. As I suggested a few minutes ago, if we say you don't meet our needs, our requirements, our priorities now at this time, or not now, we should be suggesting that there could be changes that might be made that would make them eligible for funding in the future. It doesn't guarantee it, but if we use it, we're not talking about what we might have funded in the past, but if we say not now, it means that we would consider something in the future. If that's true, we have to be prepared to share with those those potential grantees what would have to change. Is it something about the write-up? Is it something about the data that they've given? Is it something about having some more experience with this project? And whatever it may be, it's our responsibility to share honestly with them what would be necessary for them to come back and say, oh yes, now we are willing to consider you. It can't be not now as a deflection. It has to be, if we use those words, if that's what we want to convey, we have a responsibility to go along with that, to have a conversation and say what that would mean. Once again, we're not obligated to fund, but we are obligated to be honest with them if we're going to be considering them in the future if they make those changes. What about if we're never going to fund them? There's lots of things that just don't fit. But it turns out it's a wonderful project. It's a project that if your focus allowed you to fund it, you would love to do so. So the answer to them is not, oh, not now, because that's the wrong kind of deflection. But it may very well be that you know that a funder with whom you have a nice relationship who's down the street or in another part of the country loves this kind of project. And you're very comfortable referring this wonderful new project or this wonderful proven project to them. So in that case, how can we be helpful? Well, one way to be helpful is for us to pick up the phone, remember those, or to send an email to that other funder and say, here's a great project. Can I refer them to you? If it turns out it's true that you're correct, that that's an interest of theirs, then by all means, they may very well be excited to do so. It may be that if it's in a local community, you may decide to convene something through the local regional association that focuses on that topic. You don't have to fund them, but you can play a convening role that can be very constructive because others may learn about the project, even if you don't necessarily know a specific funder. It may be that there's a piece of what they're doing that you may not be able to fund, but you're doing some capacity building for other organizations that they may benefit from. If you are never going to fund them, but you love the project, think about ways in which you can enhance their possibility of moving ahead with that great project. What about a situation where you're not only never going to fund them, but they haven't even met your guidelines? Do you have any responsibility? Not you, do we have any responsibility to respond at all? Well, technically, no. If you have a great website that's very clear that you only fund in your community, or you only fund in a very specific area, and there's no question about it. It's not vague. There's nothing mysterious about it. We don't have any responsibility to respond to an off-the-wall proposal. Sometimes you may have, if you follow having some sort of online application process, it may actually prevent them from sending it to you. But lots and lots of funders still go through old-fashioned processes of getting emails and in some cases even written proposals. My recommendation is that you have a stack of postcards printed up. It's old-fashioned, I know, but you have a stack of postcards printed up, which simply says, "Thank you very much for your interest. It doesn't meet our guidelines. We wish you luck in the future," or something like that. Put it in the mail. The reason for that is not because we have an obligation to it, but we're saving ourselves a headache. We're saving ourselves somebody calling up and say, "Did you get our proposal?" Or sending another 10 emails saying, "Why didn't I hear from you?" This allows you to get off your desk, to not have to follow up on it. They haven't read the guidelines, and you're just making our own life easier. It's just a self-protective kind of thing. Sometimes the more you say, the more negotiation will follow from that. There are some people that just never like to accept no. And they want to push back, and there's really not more you're going to be able to say to them, either because there's all sorts of internal reasons that are irrelevant to them, or because the proposal is just it just doesn't have the quality that you want, and you don't want to encourage them. So sometimes you may, even though previously I've talked about giving constructive information, there may come times where the way in which you are doing everybody, including yourselves, a favor, is to simply give the most succinct no you possibly can. And if the person tries to continue to negotiate about it, you said, "Look, that's the decision. There's really nothing more to discuss." I'd like to tell a story I mean, it turns out it has a happy ending, but it was a story where we were approached by somebody who wanted to sing the national anthem in all the major league ballparks. Now, it's not really what most foundations fund. And I wrote back saying, "Well, we only fund nonprofit organizations." Okay, pretty straightforward. That was, it was an individual. Well, we got an angry call the day that letter was received, and saying, "What are you talking about? I don't make any money from this. I just want to do a good thing." And so there was a person who was quite naive, had a very nice intentioned personal goal to do it, and already had done some singing in some other places. Turned out we were able to suggest a sporting goods store that was willing to become our sponsor. And believe it or not, several years later, I read in the paper that she was able to have accomplished the goal and had really sung the national anthem in every ballpark. But the relevance for us is the very use of the word nonprofit organization was read with anger on her part, because she didn't know what a nonprofit organization was. Most of our grantees know what we're talking about. Most of the potential people that apply for projects will understand what that's about. But in the world in which we live, and when people are coming up with impact investments that they think might fit into a PRI perspective, even that can be misleading. So sometimes the most succinct answer that leads to the least negotiation is the best. Finally, what about saying no when there's social expectations? This is a tricky one. This is one where you have to make decisions ahead of time. Now, we've talked earlier in this course, and I'm going to acknowledge it, even I just said it a few minutes ago, but I want to acknowledge it. Many of us live in social situations where there are expectations. In small and medium communities, it's extraordinarily hard to say no when there's a gala, or when there's a push to support some local activity. We're just too visible. We're just too part of the social infrastructure. We're too much a part of the, if I can be direct, the power elite of the place. And so that even though it may not be our priorities, we sometimes find that there's social expectations that simply can't be deflected by giving nothing. So in those cases, we may feel that we have to give a token support for a project or an event. In a big city, there are other possibilities. So at one point, Meryl and I uh, realized that we were being asked to, on a personal level, I'm not talking about through the foundation, on a personal level, to support and attend galas and dinners of all sorts. We knew the honorees very well, or we knew the people that were the hosts of the people that were the leaders of the event. And living in New York City, as some of you do, you know that that's not an inexpensive project. So those dinners are expensive, and frankly, it was not the way we wanted to spend our philanthropic dollars. We wanted to be much more focused. We wanted to be more aligned with our own giving. And so we made a very difficult decision, which you can do in a place like New York in a way that you can't necessarily do in a smaller community. We said we're going to go to none. We drew the line saying the only way in which we could legitimately find a consistent answer without having to go into all sorts of explanation to say that we had made a difficult decision that we were no longer going to support galas and benefits. That was not where we were going to spend our philanthropic dollars. It didn't make everybody happy, but by saying no consistently and explaining it that way, people accepted it and didn't take it as a personal affront. Whereas if we had to make the decision on a case-by-case basis, especially with people we knew well, it had the possibility of people being offended. That may or may not be a way in which some of you want to address it, but for us it worked. Um, and So that's one way in which we found a way to respond to the social expectations. And so saying no requires some thoughtfulness. We want to be clear what message we want to say with the no. What's the future relationship that we want to have with a grantee, or even the people that have been behind the approach and have sent a proposal. It's our responsibility, as we talked about with the exit strategies, to think about it ahead of time, because once we have made the decision to say no, we want to be clear that we're conveying exactly the message that's consistent with what that relationship should be or should not be. Okay. So now we're going to take another little opportunity for a couple-minute break, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about saying yes.